Greetings, X, or Twitter, or however you want to call it. Wanted to touch base with you here briefly and quickly as I can. Some breaking news that occurred just a while ago, and that was with respect to the state of Texas. Now, a little background information, if I can be as quick as I can with it, is that Texas passed a law, state law, earlier this year, at the beginning of the year, I think it was, that allows Texas to basically enforce immigration. Texas SB-4 is the bill ID number for that law. When Abbott signed it into effect, Governor Abbott, the U.S. Department of Justice gave Texas an ultimatum that they either rescind the law or drop enforcing it, or they would be sued. Well, long story short, the Texas Attorney General responded and said, "Bring it on. We're not backing down." And the U.S. Department of Justice actually filed a lawsuit against Texas on that. Well, I say that to say this. Earlier this morning, a federal judge in Lubbock, Texas, I believe is where this was from. I'm not 100% certain. Issued a preliminary injunction against Texas and basically blocking SB-4 from being enforced, and which means that law is currently blocked. You know that Paxton and Governor Abbott are going to appeal it. It's a given. The question here now is when. And once they do the appeal, and I can actually look at it, I will come back online and talk about it. But I wanted to basically, I started reading just a little bit of the preliminary injunction, and I was kind of surprised, but not surprised at what the judge put in the order. It's, basically, from what I've read, which was the first few pages, he's basically tearing apart Texas's defense against the Department of Justice, basically saying that a lot of the stuff that Texas filed, they misapplied a lot of principles, a lot of arguments, but the judge was very clear as to why the injunction is warranted. I'm going to read this real briefly. He says several factors, and I've got that printout of some of the stuff, but not all of it because I have not finished reading it. It says several factors warrant an injunction. First, the supremacy clause, which I think most people, even myself, have been talking a lot about that when this lawsuit first came out and when a lot of the stuff that Texas was doing with Operation Lone Star came out. I said they're violating the supremacy clause. Well, he says first, the supremacy clause and the Supreme Court precedent. He's referring to Arizona, USA versus Arizona, SB 1070. He says, and I can prove that. I can prove that in the further reading, and I'll get to that momentarily. He says, and Supreme Court precedent affirmed that states may not exercise immigration enforcement power except as authorized by the federal government. Second, SB-4 conflicts with key provisions of federal immigration law to the detriment of United States foreign relations and treaty obligation. It says third, and this is something that I also mentioned, and I think and a lot of people mentioned it in passing when talking about the situation, is that third, searches and immigration do not constitute an invasion within the meaning of the Constitution, nor is Texas engaging in any war by enforcing SB-4. Two validated points. Finally, he says, to allow Texas to permanently supersede federal directives on the basis of an invasion would amount to nullification of federal law and authority, a notion that is anti-ethical to the Constitution and has been unequivocally rejected by federal courts since the Civil War. Makes a valid point. Now, he said, in respect to what I was mentioning when I said that searches and immigration do not constitute as an invasion within the meaning of the Constitution, is because in the Constitution, when it talks about invasion, it talks about invasion and with respect to domestic attacks or domestic war. I mean, the paragraph in the Constitution is clear that it's talking about a military attack. So, I mean, it doesn't necessarily include immigration directly. There's no mention of the word immigration surge or immigration in the Constitution, and that's going to be one of the biggest issues I think that Texas is going to have in appealing this, is that they have to be able to prove that in the Constitution it specifically talks about immigration as an invasion, and I don't see that. I don't see it anywhere in the Constitution. Now, I mentioned earlier that he talks about, and I can go back and pull it up. He in one of the pages in the lawsuit, and I didn't print it out, he says, SB-4 is similar to SB 1070. I thought I had and I don't have it printed, but I will come back and talk about this more in detail later on this week, maybe over the weekend. I'll have a chance to have completely reviewed a lot of this and be able to talk about it in more detail. But he does make a comparison in the ruling between SB-4 and SB 1070, and we're gonna look. I'm gonna look at that with you guys at another live stream here shortly. But you know for a fact that Paxton is going to appeal this. Now, when he appeals it, he is going to have to basically refute and with documented proof everything that the judge based his ruling upon. And I'm gonna sit down after I've read it. We're gonna go through all of this and talk about these points that the judge made with respect to this. But it's going to be interesting to see how this turns out. This is just another nail in the coffin against Texas, I guess you can say. The law is blocked until appeal, and I believe even once Paxton appeals this, it's not going to immediately reverse the ruling. Another thing also that I noticed is that this is a consolidated ruling, which means that it's one ruling that covers two lawsuits. So I don't know how. I'm thinking that Paxton will have to appeal the ruling directly on both lawsuits. I don't know how that mechanics of that works out. This is the first time that I've seen a consolidated ruling in that sense. The hearing was on February 15th, and that the court had, and having considering the parties' briefing and the relevant law, the court will preliminary enjoin defendants from enforcing SB-4. So, looks like that when Paxton will appeal it, he's going to have to prove why it should be reversed, and it's going to be interesting to see what Paxton or what his attorneys put in the appeal. That he can prove that this judge is in fact incorrect in every little detail that he points out, because he points out detail by detail of Texas's case, and then he points out the precedents or the court cases or the laws and statutes that substantiate basically his points that Texas's case is incorrect on many counts. It's going to be interesting to see how this turns out, but like I said, I was kind of in a rush to talk about this real quick because I wanted to put it out on the net. But I do want to talk about this lawsuit in great detail, and I'm going to research and read through all this in the next day or so. And once I have, hopefully by then, the appeal will have been posted. And when it is, we'll compare notes with the appeal and the ruling, and see exactly if where it stands, and whether or not Texas may or may not have a legal case to reverse the preliminary injunction. But we'll have to wait and see. That's all I have for now. I just wanted to get it out there while the news was like hot off the press. That SB-4 is blocked. Not surprising. I knew that the federal government was going to get that far with it. I knew the odds of it being blocked even preliminarily, was going to be substantial because of the fact that you have the Supreme Court precedent, as mentioned here earlier, and the fact that the U.S. Supremacy Clause clearly does not allow states to be able to enforce federal law. Um, we'll just have to wait and see. It's not looking good for Texas in that sense because they've already lost a lawsuit with respect to the situation in Eagle Pass, and we have yet to see what the DOJ is going to do with the respect to what DPS is doing at the in Eagle Pass with the border wire and the border buoys. So we're gonna have to wait and see how all that turns around. These are all little scenarios that are still pending, still in limbo, but then they're gonna have to be decided upon preliminarily, probably, and we're gonna have to wait and see how this all turns out. In the meantime, we'll have to just watch the news and see what direction Ken Paxton heads with this, Governor Abbott, and see what the next step is, which is more than likely going to be an appeal at the Fifth Circuit. Well, I gotta go. I will see you guys later. Have a good day. If any other news breaks, I will try to get on as quick as I can. Granted, I will be at work, but we'll just see how this goes out.